Hey there, all you ghouls and goblins. Radio 85.9 proudly presents Horror Zoid with your hosts, Stevie Scares and Natalie Nightmare, talking all things horror from the 80s, 90s, and today. Today's episode is brought to you by Velour and Violence. Want to be cozy while you watch crazy killers? Come on down to Velour and Violence. Welcome back to another episode of Horror Zoid, everybody. I'm Stevie Scares.
And I'm Natalie Nightmare.
Thank you for joining us again. We're so glad we haven't scared you off in these previous 26 weeks of episodes that we've done. That's half
wild.
A fucking year.
Yeah, that's hitting me.
Yeah, we're just talking about that before we went on the air, and I don't think I've ever committed to anything that long.
Definitely not. My ADHD can't let me.
That's
honestly.
what I'm saying. Yeah, we both have ADHD hardcore, so it's like we're those people that we pick up a new hobby every couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm like wood burning one week and then like working with Warbler the next week, and I just can't stick with one thing.
The difference is between you and me is when you pick up a new hobby, you're good at most of them. I'm not good at any of them. I pick up a new hobby and I'm like, I'm gonna be amazing, and then it's just like, wow, this is pure shit.
I don't agree.
Why did I do that? Yeah, that's totally us. So we're really happy that you all have stuck with us this long. We've surpassed 1,100 streams as far as what Anchor tells me. I don't know about any of the other places. I just know what Anchor tells me.
Anchor is God. Anchor is all.
Anchor is
all is old.
Yeah, Anchor is our ruler of ooh.
Yeah. Honestly, yes.
But yeah, we're very happy everybody stuck with us. We're happy people are enjoying it, at least as far as we know.
Yeah.
We keep saying every week, email us with any hate mail, and we haven't gotten it yet.
Yeah, no hate mail.
No hate mail yet.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for a letter where somebody's like, and it's going to be all misspelled too, but I'm waiting for a letter where somebody's like, you guys suck. And you totally misquoted this horror movie. It did not come out in this year. It came out in this year.
Or I do say Rob Zombie is not good.
Yeah, the elevated horror fans.
Yeah, we're going to get all the types. I mean, eventually they'll come for us. But I feel like once we do, like, that first hate mail, I'm going to be like, guys, we made it.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't received any direct hate mail. We had the person we talked about, I think, last week or the week before, who talked shit on Instagram about Barbarian.
I mean, we get some shit comments.
We get some crazy shit every now and then. But yeah, thankfully we don't dwell on it too much. But yeah, speaking of which, email us, horrorzoidpod@gmail.com, fan mail, hate mail, chirps, scary stories that we can read on air. Go ahead and send them our way.
Yeah.
We love to hear them. And I know I kind of did that backwards from what I normally do, but also leave us a review. We still need those reviews. 5-star preferably, even if you're lying. Just drop us a 5-star review.
Yeah.
You can say, I'm lying, the show sucks, but they told me to give them a 5-star review. So, yeah, go ahead and leave us those reviews. Those help us grow and elevate us and help us get to the next level.
And speaking of helping us grow, if you click one of the links in the description of wherever you're listening to this podcast, you can also leave us a voice message there. It'll take you to Anchor and lets you do that. So if you're not the typing kind of person or you don't want to be a keyboard warrior, you can just leave us your bullshit on there and we'll listen to it and play it on air probably.
Yeah, preferably if you're going to leave us a voice message, do it with that voice modulator that John Kramer uses in the Saw movies.
Absolutely.
Where it's
please. Oh my God, I want a Saw tape.
I want to play a game.
Yes.
If I get a voice message like that, you bet that shit's making the air. We're not.
Yeah.
No, I'm not holding that back at all.
You'll be a guest on the show.
You will be a weekly feature at that point. If you can drop us some John Kramer ass, it's like, Dr. Gordon, to this point, you have not been grateful about your life. You give us some shit like that, man. We're in business. I would love that.
That'd be fucking great.
Link in the description. Leave us a voice message. Also, link in the description. You can give us money. Did you know you can give us money? Because you can give us money.
Yeah, I don't think you can select like Bitcoin or Dogecoin or whatever the fuck is out there, but you can put in your information and give us like $1, $10, $100.
Even a penny.
Yeah.
We're not picky. We're not going to say no to any amount of money.
Exactly.
Plus, there's no rule on tipping for podcast hosts. It's like there's a rule on tipping your server. It's customary 20%. If you do any less than 20%, I know I've said this on the show before. Fuck you if you do any less than 20%.
This is like, I'm going to give these dollars to these people because I pity them, or that man's a funny man.
Right.
Here, keep doing that, funny
Dance,
man.
clown.
Yeah.
It's like that scene in Zoolander. You're a monkey, Derek. Dance. That's what we are. We're the dancing Zoolander monkeys.
Yeah.
So please, yes, financially contribute in any way you possibly can. And for everything else, go to horrorzoid.com. You can find TikTok, Instagram, any fucking link. If you have a friend who wants to listen to the podcast and you don't know where to tell them to go, just say horrorzoid.com. We've got all that shit up there.
Bingo. Find us anywhere there.
Find us anywhere. Speaking of finding us anywhere, we got some shout outs to give this week.
Yeah.
TikTok. I don't want to say the algorithm didn't fuck us, but this week it used lube. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It was a little bit nicer this time. We got a few videos pushed more, which also got some fun comments on here, but I think it's, we should probably, before I say this, preface with this episode. What we're doing is the Decade of Horror.
Yes, it is part 2.
Part 2, yes.
Part 2 of our 5-part series that we started last month, in which we talk about the 2000s. Yeah, I realized we got into everything, and we didn't talk about our episode theme.
We came in hot.
If you clicked on the link, you know we're talking about the 2000s.
Yeah, if you're listening to the episode, you're like, listen, fuckers, I already know the title. You actually don't have to tell me like I know. It's
but
pretty
we have to get that out of the way,
yeah.
or we're going to be sitting there like freaking out later. Like, we didn't say what the episode's about.
Yes.
But yes, we're talking about...
It's Y2K, baby.
Y2K, 2000s horror. It's all about that shit that Natalie and I grew up with.
Hell yeah, this is our prime right here.
This is our prime right now. We are millennials. I was born in 89. Natalie was born in 85. So that is our perfect fucking, like, we were both, like, in our teenage years in the 2000s, and we got to experience some crazy fucking horror movies.
Oddly enough, us talking about this week is... as of right now, February of 2023, the Y2K fashion among teens is booming like a motherfucker. I can buy butterfly clips again, baby tees, low-rise jeans, bedazzled denim jackets. It's all out there.
It's funny, now that you say that, I have noticed on TikTok lately, there's that new filter that looks like the makeup that girls used to do in the 2000s, where it was the bronzer, but then it was like the bright white lipstick.
Oh, yeah.
There's
a lot
that
of
filter
those...
going around on TikTok right now, and I'm like, what? That's not a filter. That's how people used to look.
Right.
That's how people did their makeup.
We were used to the light lip gloss and the white eyeshadow, for sure.
Yeah.
It's bizarre talking about this as someone who's in their late 30s thinking that I'm old enough now that what was cool when I was a teenager is cool again. You can't look anywhere without seeing a wedge sandal or platform.
It's as soon as you hit that 20-year point. Like, once 2020 hit, it was game over. All of our shit had officially become retro.
It did.
20 years is officially in my head. 20 years is the mark. If it was 20 years since the start of the decade, you're going to start seeing that shit come around again.
Yeah, it does. Because, I mean, when we were younger, we kind of pulled a lot of the 80s stuff in through the 90s, honestly.
Yeah, there are definitely things that went through from the 80s to the 90s, the 2000s.
But the 80s got, like, really popular again a few years ago. I think, Stranger Things and stuff like that probably helped.
Stranger Things has helped keep the 80s alive for sure. And it's funny, I think that's going to be a theme that we notice as we do these Decade of Horror episodes. Again, this is part 2 of the 5-part series that we started last month. And again, I think there's going to be themes that people notice. There's going to be threads that go through there. It's like, it's funny. We're working our way backwards, but I think you're going to start to see why we're doing it backwards.
Yeah.
Because we want you to see what carried over from decade to decade, but in reverse.
Honestly, yeah.
I think it's going to help to see it like that.
There's a topic that we talked about in our first part when we did the 2010s that kind of, it comes into play a little bit more with some of the stuff we saw in the 2000s.
Exactly. And the seeds were planted for some of the stuff we saw in the 2010s. And again, you will see all that here in this episode. But again, we want to give some shout outs. So we put up the TikTok video this week, our question of the week.
Which, as always, if you go onto our page Monday, sometime through Monday, we're not really good at putting it up at
not a set time, but sometime on Monday, you will find
sometime on Monday
question of the week.
Yeah, so you can go there if you don't give a fuck about any of our other videos, but you're like, I want to put my input in for...
Yes.
Because people just like to answer fucking questions. Like, we're the generation of BuzzFeed quizzes. and
We
like
are?
magazine quizzes, like what personality type is your boyfriend? So like people just like doing this. So you can go there.
What type of citrus fruit are you? I gotta know.
Right. Yeah.
Fucking A.
And answer our question, which of course for this week we posted, what's your favorite movie of the 2000s?
Yes, we got some great answers. The first person I want to shout out is one of my fucking favorite people to follow on TikTok.
Hell yeah.
His name is Goblin Bob.
Goblin
if
Bob
you are not
rocks.
following Goblin Bob, go follow him right now. I don't care if you don't follow anybody else on TikTok. I don't care if you don't have TikTok. Goblin Bob is worth being on TikTok for.
Facts.
But Goblin Bob, I don't know if he's listened to the show and he knows kind of what's near and dear to my heart, but he said his favorite film of the 2000s was Dead Silence.
Yeah, and that's a near and dear to our hearts.
It's so good. It's so good. Obviously we did Sequelizer, and I told you about 7 ridiculous sequels I would give Dead Silence if given the opportunity. Suffice to say, I fucking love Dead Silence.
Right.
It's
exactly.
one of the greatest movies to us. It's just such a good guilty pleasure shitty horror movie.
Yes.
So yes, Goblin Bob, fucking thumbs up to that one.
The next one I really fucking liked because these two picks are solid, but House of Horror said Silent Hill or Resident Evil.
And I love this because they actually came back to say Resident Evil.
Yeah.
They originally said Silent Hill, and then they're like, oh, by the way, also Resident Evil.
Yeah,
Like they were
hell
just
yeah.
like they were just thinking about this all day, and if that's the case, fucking awesome. Glad we could get your fucking noodle going there.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're both amazing picks. Honestly, really solid video game movies to me in different ways. Like Silent Hill, very, very close to the games. Resident Evil, kind of its own story in that first movie,
Very
but
much
both
so.
just fun, awesome fucking movies.
True. The next one comes to us from Skeleton of a Goblin. You notice a lot of our followers are goblins. I'm
Yeah.
really cool with that.
That's
Skeleton
all right.
of a Goblin said Jennifer's Body.
Solid.
A very solid
Hell
choice.
yeah.
We love Jennifer's Body. It's another guilty pleasure one, but I think it's meant to be a guilty pleasure.
Absolutely.
Like it's not that it's a bad movie by any means.
No, not at all. And
now-
obviously, it's one of my favorite feminist icon movies.
It is.
So
It is. And
even though she took out Kyle Gallner for like no reason, he was just like the good, cute emo boy.
moment of silence for our
R.I.P..
boy KG.
KG, we love you.
Got to give some love to KG. And the director of Jennifer's Body, Karen Kusama, I want to give a big shout out to. She also directed a movie in the 2010s called The Invitation,
Yes.
starring Logan Marshall Green.
Yes. We've
J-
talked about that one a bit.
Like her two.
fucking-
I don't know if she's
I
done
would
any other
never-
horror movies, but those two fucking movies alone, two very different movies, but
I was
two
gonna say,
so
yes.
fucking good.
If you could take out like any credits and you just sat me down and watched these two movies, I'd be like, tell me what's in common. I'd be like, I don't know. And they'd be like,
Nothing.
same director. I'd be like, what?
Right. Two extremely different movies. But yeah, Karen Kusama, a phenomenal fucking director. Obviously, Diablo Cody wrote Jennifer's Body. So kudos to Skeleton of a Goblin. I love that call
Yeah.
out to Jennifer's Body because
Fuck
that
yeah.
was one of those movies that didn't get a lot of love and respect when it first came out. But I
Yeah.
think it deserves way more than it gets credit for.
It's a cult classic now, yeah.
It is. And then two followers back to back. A.R. Harris, who is an author that we follow on TikTok. She's very talented. Go follow A.R. Harris on TikTok. A great account. We love participating and engaging with them. They said The Mist, and Nero113 also said The Mist. They followed up with a comment, though, and said, it wasn't that scary, and the CGI was meh, which I will agree with, but the story and characters are amazing, and the ending was so perfect.
Yeah.
Obviously, we talked about bleak endings last week.
Yeah.
And we will agree on all fronts that, yes, it was an amazing ending. Story and characters. I talked about Miss Carmody being just a great fucking human villain.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I will also agree that I don't know about scare factors, and the CGI was left a little to be desired.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll give you all that.
I've seen a little bit. I did a little more research since last week because I know I said I hadn't seen The Mist, but a lot of people really liked whenever I posted the ending. I think people just enjoy seeing that shit and being sad together.
Misery loves company.
Right.
That's the number one principle of life.
Yeah.
Misery loves company.
It's okay to be sad, and
It
it's okay
is.
to want to be sad. Like, no one just sits down watching The Mist like, oh, it's a great day. I'm going to watch The Mist. It'll cheer me up. Like,
Right.
But you watch it because you do. People just want to be sad sometimes.
Right, and
That's fine.
I think the fact that we all found it as bleak as the next person did, I think helps that create that sense of community and camaraderie. If you can look at the guy next to you or the person next to you and just be like, "That was fucked up, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, it was pretty fucked up."
Right.
You have built a community. Thank you, Stephen King, Frank Darabont, for giving us one of the most sad, tragic endings of all time.
Yeah.
That has brought us all together. I don't think anything has unified people the way the ending of The Mist has unified us all.
Has. Yeah.
In just admitting it was one of the saddest fucking pieces of art and fiction we've ever seen.
Right. I mean, and I said last week, it's one of those movies I've never seen, but I've seen the ending a ton of times because it's everywhere.
Everywhere.
Because it's iconic.
It is so iconic. All right. Let's get into the meat of this episode.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to talk about the 2000s in film. Remember, last time we did this for the 2010s, we more were hitting topics. We weren't looking at specific movies. We will talk about a lot of movies, but we're going to be more focused on like the trends, the topics, the big shit that you saw, the themes that were very present in the 2000s in horror movies.
Yeah.
And I think the big thing that we got to start talking about, because the 2000s gets a lot of shit for this, is it was the decade of remakes.
Yeah.
So many fucking remakes.
Just fucking bonkers amount. Like, to the point that we made a video, like, joke about it, where it was like watching the shitty 2000s remakes back then. You're like, God, this is fucking awful. And now I'm like, I fucking love these movies.
Right, because that's the shit that when we are bored and we need a comfort movie to put on, what are we throwing on? We're throwing on one of those shitty fucking 2000s remakes. And I'll be honest right now. We have talked so much shit about When a Stranger Calls, but it is a movie that when it is on, we're gonna leave it on. We're gonna watch it. It just stays.
Yeah. It's definitely so bad it's good at this point.
It is so bad it's good. It is terrible acting, terrible direction, terrible writing, everything. But for some reason, we can't turn it off.
Right.
It's just a guilty pleasure, enjoyable horror movie.
But that one aside, we got brilliant, amazing remakes. And the thing that's interesting, and we kind of talked about, is the popularity of J-horror into the United States grew, also giving us our international remakes like The Grudge and The Ring. Obviously, those are two we've talked about before, and they're huge, iconic movies. Like The Ring is one of those, we've talked about it. It's a PG-13 movie. It's terrifying. It's a very amazing adaptation.
Yes, yeah. So the J-horror, I know the big three that everybody talks about are The Grudge, The Ring, and Dark Water. And we haven't seen Dark Water. We know about Dark Water because when we were watching the documentary on Elisa Lam, and they were saying like her case is so parallel to that movie, the plot of the movie. So like we know the plot of the movie, we know kind of the gist of it. But yes, that's one we have not seen. But The Grudge and The Ring, we've gushed about them. We did the whole PG-13 horror. We did remake horror. We have gushed about these, and for good reason.
I was going to say, they're talked about for good reason. But one that I don't think ever mentioned that I hadn't seen until more recently is The Eye.
The Eye isn't J-horror, though. The Eye, I believe, is one of the other. It's another country in Asia.
Okay.
So there's a few on here that I put in the notes, like The Eye, One Missed Call, Pulse, and Quarantine are all different countries. But yeah, like when you start talking about J-horror, I immediately start thinking, it's like, it wasn't just J-horror. Like the remakes branched out from Japan, and they started getting them from Indonesia, and Rec is a Spanish film. So it's like, like the American remakes, like it wasn't just that we were directing our own remakes. Now we're getting them from all sorts of different countries. And I think that was part of the most fascinating thing about some of these remakes is, well, I mean, we got great ones like The Grudge and The Ring, but One Missed Call, not so great.
Yeah, not the best. And even The Eye, like it's not
either.
Bad, but it's not great. Like, and it's one of those, I can see why it didn't hit that level the way The Grudge and The Ring did.
Yes, yeah. Those two were definitely the ones that stood head and shoulder above all the others because the quality was there. And it's one of those things where if you take away the fact they're a remake, you still look at them like they're still good movies.
Right. And
it's like the opposite of Halloween 3.
Right, exactly. But I think it also helps that they stay true to the source material. And, obviously we've talked about how there were people that came over from Japan to help, whether they were writing or producing, directing, whatever, were involved in these movies.
Or like, yeah, Shimizu directed the Japanese version
Right.
of The Grudge, and he directed the American version.
Right.
So you're right. There was a lot of overlap in the crew and the cast and things like that.
But I feel like with remakes, I like that. Like, I don't want them to stray too much. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
yeah.
I feel like they take liberties and they change the main story too much. And it's just like, no, it's okay. Like,
Yes.
don't do that.
Yeah,
And I feel like that ruins it. And I think that's why The Grudge and The Ring are such solid movies, is because they do just kind of do exactly the same thing, just it's an American movie.
They do, and The Ring, I think, is strays a little bit farther from the source material, but even the people who are fans of Ringu have commented that even the things that they changed made sense, the reasons and the ways that they changed them.
They do.
That's the thing. It's where The Grudge was more of a faithful adaptation because you had the same director for both movies, and obviously the production of fucking Sam Raimi and his whole crew. Like, just you had so many good people behind it. But then you have The Ring, which changed things, but again, that's what makes it count, though, and that's what makes people appreciate remakes when they change things, is they have to make sense,
right?
And that's why The Ring, I think, has stood the test of time as one of the better remakes.
I agree.
So, yeah.
Now, American remakes, though,
shitloads, fucking shitloads. Like, we could back a truck up 80 fucking thousand times full of remakes from the 2000s.
And of course, one of those includes When a Stranger Calls, which is shitty and awful, and
most of them were.
A lot of them were. And this is what we mean by the, like, we would watch them then and we were like, I mean, it's okay. Like, Friday the 13th, I remember seeing in theaters, and I was like, I mean, like, it was cool.
Yeah.
But I wasn't, like, wowed by it, and now I watch it, I'm like, I fucking love this one. Like, Jason's, like, brutal. Like, everyone's so one-dimensional and fucking campy. Like, it's just a fun movie.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of these are like that. They're not particularly great. Some of them are definitely better, but they're all just so fucking fun to watch.
Well, one thing I want to bring up, I think it's a good time to bring it up too, since we're talking about the 2000s being this decade of remakes, and you bring up the great point. We made you made the video on TikTok where it was we hated them back then, but now we're just like, give me more, give me more. Mm-hmm. I think it was, for me at least, I'll just speak from my perspective. Back then, when I would watch these movies, I was young, I was a teenager, and I got caught up in probably what a lot of these kids are getting wrapped up in now with this whole elevated horror shit. Mm-hmm. I think I tried to be a little too film snobby about it. I tried to be like, because I'd watch these remakes, and it's like, first off, I'd walk in, it's like, it's a remake, I'm probably going to hate it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of us walked into these remakes being like, oh, it's a remake, gonna suck. Yeah. And I think we had to learn those lessons. And I think as we've matured and grown as fans, we can now look back on these movies, or at least I can. Mm-hmm. I can look back on these movies, and I'm like, I'm not such a film snob about it. It's like, I can appreciate them for what they are. Mm-hmm. And, it's like I always say, you can't walk into every movie and think it's going to be fucking Citizen Kane.
Right. No, I'm with you. And it's interesting that you say that, because I kind of feel... I didn't have a similar experience. I've always just kind of enjoyed bad movies. I grew up in a house where my dad really loved action movies and westerns, like old school westerns. They're all really campy and basic, and the action movies all have the same, like, 3 plots.
Yeah.
But...
And they all star Steven Seagal.
Right. I watched Under Siege, like, a billion times. Like,
God.
We had a ton of these VHSs, and my dad would just get these movies, and... I mean, every now and then he'd be like, well, that one sucked. Like, I particularly remember The Happening. He was just like, that movie was fucking awful.
The Happening was fucking terrible. And one day we're going to do a movie or an episode about bad movies. And fuck, I can't wait to tear that one apart.
But that's one, it's like, it's really bad. But he also just gave me this appreciation for these, like, cheesy, cheap, low-budget action movies. And so I feel like that really carried over into horror for me. So when I'd go watch these, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so bad. But I would have so much fun because... shit like Steven Seagal,
That's a great point. It's funny you say that, because now that, I mean, looking back, like, my dad was the same way. He loved, we were just at his place, fucking a few months ago, and he's got all these fucking action movies. He always does. But I remember that he would have on Die Hard. He would have on the Steven Seagal ones, the Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, fucking the one that Brandon Lee did, Rapid Fire, I think is what it was called. Like, people, like my parents ate that shit up.
Exactly.
And and they weren't good movies. And you're right. And like looking back now, we're like, yeah,
Well,
I think
perfect
maybe
example.
it's hereditary and genetic because they like shitty movies and we like shitty movies.
I don't know. I really feel like, I mean, you could say that's part of it. I just think, given that appreciation for it at such a young age,
Yeah.
like that it's okay to just like have fun watching a movie.
For sure.
Because we would sit there and he'd, throw banter at the TV. And what do we do every time when a
fucking
Stranger
time.
Calls is on, or fucking Friday the 13th, even some of the better movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, one of the best fucking remakes. We still joke about it when we watch it. There's
my
still,
God, yeah.
There's still parts that are laughable.
With the
I
fucking
mean, road don't
engagement
go
ring.
that far.
Road don't go that far.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the shitty storyline with the engagement ring, all that shit.
Yeah.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
I think
yeah.
that's one of those things I feel like if you just let yourself go and just enjoy what you're seeing, you're going to enjoy movies so much more instead of trying to be the next big film critic and art film snob.
It's so funny because like I go back and forth on our Letterboxd, for instance. It's like one minute I'm in love with it, next minute I'm like I don't want anything to do with it. And I think a big reason is because I get into it because I see other people doing reviews for movies, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It is. It's a lot of fun. That's one thing I love about Letterboxd.
Yeah.
Is it's allowed everybody to become a film critic to an extent. However, I think we're getting into a point, and the reason I start to fall out of love with it is because people are way too fucking harsh on these movies.
All right. Yeah.
And it's mind-boggling to me because it's like it is horror. Mm-hmm. It was never supposed to be this big fucking artistic genre. Like there is art in it. I'm not saying there's not, because obviously we talk about the everybody says the first horror film is Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and how it has these roots in German expressionism film and all that shit. Yes, it does have an artistic quality.
Yeah.
But horror was never meant to be this whole big fucking artistic movement the way that I think some of these people are like. I think everybody just wants to feel like they're a part of something bigger than what it is, and it's just a film genre, just like anything else.
And see, it's funny that you say that because you're like, it's just a film genre, which sounds almost like it's a bad thing, but it's not. Yeah. But it's also, it just goes to show that, something that we've kind of talked about, how it's never really included with like Academy Awards. Like,
yes, I'm glad you brought that up.
It's I saw a video the other day about how through 100 years or whatever, there's only been like
11 horror movies. Yeah, I saw that one.
And then only one has won, and it was Silence of the Lambs. Yeah. And that's really shitty to me because there is so much art, whether it's, Terrifier or whether it's an Ari Aster film like Hereditary. There's art there and there's passion. But I think that the way that there's been so much elevated horror and all of this movement with art critics and film critics, I think everyone just wants to be that person that can overanalyze and judge everything. And to me, it's one thing to overanalyze or give a harsh review when it's needed, but I also think about movies that were just doomed because of huge critics like Roger Ebert giving a thumbs down. Yeah. And it's like there's movies that are huge popular classics, and
Roger Ebert is responsible for shitting on a lot of horror movies, and he really put the genre down and a lot of that. But the thing about people like Roger Ebert, Gene Siskel, Robert Roper, Richard Roper, people like that, like film critics are great and all, but you got to remember they're one person and it's one opinion. It's just like Natalie and I. It's like we appreciate you guys listening, but ultimately it's like we're gonna like the movies we're gonna like. You're gonna like the movies you like, and no fault either way. You like what you like. We like what we like. It's so subjective. Yeah. And it's like people treat, and that's the thing. It's like, it's not that it's not art. I wasn't trying to imply that it's not art. Like I said, it's got its root in arts. But it's not, we can't keep dealing in absolutes and definites and things like that. There needs to be these shades of fucking gray. I
agree, because you can't there's movies on totally opposite ends. Like, I'm not going to take The Black Phone and put it up against The Whale, right?
No, exactly. You're not going to do that.
And I feel like with any genre, whether it's action, horror, comedy, you just can't put certain movies up against each other. So I'm not going to go into like fucking, I don't know, Violent Night and hold it up to the same standards as when we walked in to go see Infinity Pool.
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone kind of keeps that same level of expectance, and then when it doesn't meet it, which it's obviously not going to, it gets shit on.
It's like I fucking said, you can't treat every movie like a Citizen Kane.
And I'm going to bring that back around, though, for how we feel. We got heavy there for a second.
Well, it's part
how
of the fun. It's a discussion about these different themes and topics.
But it's how we feel about a lot of these remakes when we look back on them.
Yeah.
Because we talk about movies that are so bad they're good, like When a Stranger Calls. I know I keep saying it.
It is though. It's so bad. It's good. House of Wax is another one that it's like, again, I've been honest with people.
Fun,
it's like,
yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I know it's a so bad it's good from the reputation that it has.
And it's a lot of fun. It's iconic. There's all these things in it that people love.
13 Ghosts isn't a great movie either, though, but we fucking love it, man.
I was gonna say, you get Matthew Lillard,
Tony
and
Shalhoub.
Everybody loves the jackal, like the ghost.
Yeah.
The ghosts are fucking amazing in the movie, but the acting is fucking weird. Like half the dialogue in the opening, bizarre, but we love that movie.
Yeah, the whole fucking the scene where it shows like the mother's death just through the series of like photographs and changing sceneries.
Oh yeah,
and shit. It's so fucking bizarre.
The camera pan through the living room. And
it's like they just put the camera on a swivel and just changed the fucking scenery, and like that's the opening of the movie. It's like, yes, we admit it. It's like they're not great movies, but we enjoyed them. Now, one thing I will say to people. Anybody who, we're defenders, and obviously there's going to be these people there's these films have their detractors, is we did have the advantage of seeing some of these in theaters, which I think might also endear them to us a little bit more. You're always going to love something that you were able to experience in its first run. And these kids are coming out now like, these movies are shit. They're just being honest with us because they're discovering the movies in their own way. And yeah, if the first time you're seeing, fucking When a Stranger Calls or 13 Ghosts is, on you rented it on demand or you just saw it on Netflix or something, you're probably like, that was just a stupid horror movie.
Right.
Because it is.
But it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I feel like I do see a lot of like younger, like early 20s like accounts.
Oh yeah.
Where, they have like the TV with the VHS and they're like, I'm watching Scream on VHS, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm
like, just normal for us. We all had the Scream
I'm like,
VHS.
Why didn't I keep all my old shit? Like, I'm just mad, honestly, that they have the shit I used to.
I know, right?
I would give anything for that old like Mickey Mouse TV from Target, but like watching them like go through literally our teen years, which is why I think the 2000s is so special to us.
Yeah.
Is really kind of cool, because I feel like it's not even horror movie related, but someone was like, Pizza Hut had toys on a post that I posted on my personal page like a week ago. And I was like, the fact that I'm being asked by someone younger about something from my childhood kind of made me feel special and cool. I was like, oh my God, they like want to actually know about this. So this is kind of one of those, like, I hope as we talk about these, maybe there's someone out there who's like, I haven't seen House of Wax, but like, okay, Paris Hilton's in that fucking movie. Right. She gets impaled. Like, just go watch it.
Right.
It's fun.
It's funny that there's another Paris Hilton fucking appearance on our list here. Not our list, but in our notes here. It's fucking. And speaking of which, let's get to that. Like, we talked enough about the remakes and the shit that wasn't original. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side, we got to talk about the shit that was truly fucking original that we saw in the 2000s. And first and foremost, fucking Pan's Labyrinth.
I love this. This is a comfort movie for me. Soundtrack alone is beautiful.
Beautiful score, beautiful
obviously
soundtrack.
Visual. Del
Toro. Guillermo del Toro directed this. This is 2006, I want to say, and it's a Spanish language horror movie that is just fucking beautiful. If you haven't seen it, go see it.
Fucked up fairy tale.
It is a
tragic.
Beautiful fucked up fairy tale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pan's Labyrinth, American Psycho, which was an adaptation of a book, mind you, but it is one of the most original horror movies from a visual standpoint, from a subject matter standpoint.
But it came in hot, right, at 2000.
It did. And another one came in hot in 2000 was Ginger Snaps.
We love Ginger Snaps.
We love Ginger Snaps. I love the fact that the 2000s was also kind of the beginning of getting these new spins on old stories. Like, we had Ginger Snaps, which is a werewolf story.
Right.
I was talking before the show, Hollow Man, which I guess isn't really a horror movie.
Well, hell, Dracula 2000.
Yeah. Dracula 2000. But Hollow Man was an Invisible Man story.
Right.
One of my favorite movies from 2002 called May is a Frankenstein story when you think about it. So it's like it was like the 2000s was we got this new set of fresh filmmakers who were like, we love these old stories, but now we're going to put a new spin on it. And the guy who made Ginger Snaps, I forget I think his last name's Fawcett. I think it's John Fawcett made Ginger Snaps. Fucking brilliant.
Absolutely.
What he did there.
This is, I mean, we've talked about it before. Badass feminist sister movie. But and this is one that's out of Canada, correct? Yes.
Yes, it was a Canadian horror movie. Absolutely.
Which is, I mean, delightful. We love them.
We love the Canucks.
It's one of those that, it really has become that cult classic. If you had asked me like 10 years ago, do you think you would see this many people talk about Ginger Snaps? I'd be like, no. Like, I feel like I'm watching the most underground thing ever. It just felt that way.
If you would have asked me 10, 15 years ago, would Joe Bob Briggs be talking about Ginger Snaps? I'd be like, no fucking way. To hear
awesome.
Joe Bob talk about Ginger Snaps, if you have Shudder right now, I think it's still available. Go check out Joe Bob's episode where they did Ginger Snaps on the last drive-in. It fucking was brilliant hearing him talk about the movie that way. And it is one of the most original movies you will ever see. Ginger Snaps truly is.
It really is.
Yeah. Some other ones we're going to give a shout out to. Final Destination. I didn't know where else to put this on the fucking, but it's like, because that's why I had to talk about most original films of the 2000s.
No, I'm with you because Final Destination, definitely a phenomenon in itself.
Oh, absolutely.
We were joking the other day, like, it's bizarre that Final Destination, it's so huge, but everyone really mainly talks about the second one and that we're all scared of the log trucks.
We are all scared of the log trucks.
Right.
In fact, anytime Natalie and I see a log truck, we send each other a picture or video like, oh, about to get Final Destination happening to me.
But I mean, like, anytime you see something talking about Final Destination, it's always that. It's never like the plane crash, like in the first movie.
Which is so fucked up to me because it's like the plane crash is what always stood out to me.
The plane crash, I was like, I had to like pause and walk away for a second and come back. Like,
and you got to remember the first Final Destination, and we're going to get to this a little bit more later. The first Final Destination came out in 2000, so it was literally the year before 9/11.
Yeah.
So like a plane crash movie, then it was like the last year, it was like the cutoff. You can't do those anymore.
Yeah.
But Final Destination got in there and he gave us a fucking intense fucking scene. Like, and I'm sorry.
Very.
Because we got a lot of great, like, in the 90s, we got, like, not even horror movies. We got a lot of great plane movies. Because we got, like, Air Force One, True Lies. Con Air. We had so many great airplane movies.
Right.
But it was great to have fucking, like, just more shit for us. Like Final Destination. Red Eye was another great one from the 2000s.
Red Eye's
took place
awesome.
on a plane. So got to give some shout-outs and love there. Natalie's favorite movie of all time came out in the 2000s, and easily one of the most unique original films, Trick or Treat.
Trick or Treat.
Trick or Treat, Michael Dougherty, the anthology film that stole our hearts.
Yeah.
And we actually got to see this one in theaters finally.
Yes. I did cry when it started to play. I will very bravely admit that.
Yeah. That music kicked on.
Yeah, it's that movie is like everything to me, and the fact that it finally got its first theatrical release is really fucking cool because I remember I used to see the comics and was like so excited. I'm like, this little fucking burlap mask kid looks cool as hell.
Yeah.
And then whenever the movie came out on DVD and I finally watched it, like, that was it.
Well,
everything to me.
I remember because I was one of those internet nerds in like the early days of the internet, like in the 2000s and shit. I was on those message boards, and I remember on those message boards when people would talk about like new horror movies and stuff. It was like there's this for years, for like 2 or 3 years. It was like there's this movie coming out called Trick or Treat.
Yeah,
and it's got Anna Paquin in it. Like that's all we knew about it. It's a horror
Anna
movie,
Paquin.
and it's got Anna Paquin. It's called Trick or Treat. We had this photo of this fucking kid named Sam. Like that, we had so very few details, but we kept hearing it's this great movie. It's this great movie. It's this great movie. And finally, when it came out on DVD in like 2009, we finally got it, and it just blew everyone away.
Yeah, it really did.
It really did. It was a phenomenon. Like we said, Natalie got to see it in theaters. Finally, it finally got released in theaters, and it was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's one of those that I will never gatekeep. Like, I made everybody that I met watch this movie. It's definitely like, no, you're going to watch this if we're going to be friends.
Right.
And I wanted to tell everybody about it. And now, like, every fucking horror t-shirt fucking page has a trick or treat collection. There's makeup palettes and costumes and home decor, and I'm like, yes, everybody, Cult of Sam, Cult of Sam. It's, don't ever gatekeep. Make everything popular, and I would want everyone to see this.
Oh yeah. There's a couple movies we're going to talk about here in a sec that are on that list too that I would want some more merch of.
Absolutely.
But I got to give some love to District 9.
This one, awesome fucking movie.
I fucking love it. It's body horror. It's very like, obviously it's sci-fi. People focus on the fact that it's sci-fi, it's aliens, it's shit like that. But no,
you say aliens and they're like, it's not horror, and you're like, it is
fucking horror. It's very much horror in the same way that the first original Alien movie from 1979 is horror.
It has a lot of it's very social statement-y.
Very social statement. It was Neil Blomkamp, who has gone on to direct Elysium and what's the other one? Chappie. Yeah. He's a sci-fi genius god lord at this point. He's terrific, and I think and I'm really disappointed. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm excited for Fede Alvarez's Alien movie, TV series, whatever it's going to be. But Neil Blomkamp has been trying to get an Alien film made for years, and I think he's the number one person.
Give this man a xenomorph.
We gotta give him a fucking xenomorph.
Yeah, we need an Alien movie on level with Prey, because Prey, blew people away.
That's what he could give us, though. Like, he could give us a fucking Prey level Alien movie. So gotta give love to District 9. Fucking Neil Blomkamp.
Yeah.
Like, just one of my favorite filmmakers. But these next two movies we gotta talk about are just fucking bananas, and these are ones I'd love to see merch for.
There's
one
of them
I said earlier.
I see more recently, and there was a lot of jokes going around that Gen Z has found the movie.
Oh yeah. And this is the second mention of Paris Hilton, as I was talking about. This is Repo, the Genetic Opera.
Yeah.
So not only was Paris Hilton in House of Wax, we were like, fuck, maybe that's the end of her in horror movies. Nope. Repo, the Genetic Opera.
Also get Bill Moseley.
You get Bill Moseley. You get Anthony Stewart Head, who played Giles in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Totally love him. Great musician Sarah Brightman is in it. It's just a very eclectic, strange, weird cast, and I fucking love everything about this movie.
It's such a pretty movie.
It's a pretty movie. The music. Can we talk about the fucking music for a moment?
Yeah.
That is one of the best forms of soundtrack and music and score and composition coming together that I've seen.
Yes.
I absolutely love Repo, the Genetic Opera.
I agree. I'm glad that you love this.
Yeah, I get the fucking songs stuck in my head on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
It's infectious. Last one we're going to talk about as far as like original great movies from the 2000s. This one doesn't get talked about enough. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm starting to see a little bit more for this. Like, there were a few like t-shirt drops that I saw around Halloween for this. And I think they're actually kind of working on a potential little sequel spin-off for this.
I have heard that there's supposed to be some type of related movie that takes place within the same universe.
Yes.
Focuses on Final Girls. If I remember right, it's supposed to be like Final Girl support group, but like a different kind of spin on it.
Yeah.
Not quite as Grady Hendrixy.
Right. Yeah. Don't know a whole lot about it, but it does say, you know,
it takes
within
place
the realm.
In the same universe as Behind the Mask, Leslie Vernon. But this is literally a movie. It's so meta because it's about a guy who wants to be a famous killer like Freddy, Michael, and Jason, who, by the way, are real fucking people in this universe.
That's what's wild about this movie. Whenever they start talking, because it's like documentary
style, yeah.
And he's mentioning them, and it's like, they're canon in his universe. So like they're out there, all of them. So like Freddy versus Jason versus Michael could happen.
Right. All of this shit is real. So this guy wants to be a killer. He wants to be a villain, just like fucking Michael, Freddy, and Jason. And he's
just like training to be like he's like sprinting through apple fields.
He's sprinting through apple fields. He's burying himself alive. Yeah. He's going all fucking out and bonkers. And it's got Robert Englund in it, who he doesn't play Freddy. I know Freddy exists in this universe, but this Robert Englund is a completely different character. And the way they use him is tremendous. Just everything about Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon is so good. If you find it anywhere, I don't know where it's fucking streaming, but find it because it's a great movie. I have a note in here that just says teen horror shit. I just had to get that in there because I just wanted to talk about this because this was another decade of teen horror movies.
Well, I think a lot of stuff kind of rolled through from the 90s here.
Yes.
This is one of those that when we talk about the 90s, it's going to be the trend.
Oh, God.
But, like,
poster.
It carried in the posters that were set up, like Final Destination, Scream 3, Scream, like all the Scream movies, really.
Yeah, yeah.
But that character lineup where you have like the main characters in the front and like the slowly decreasing back with there was always like blue or reds and like weird tones and heavy shadows,
and everybody always had like it was always like sexy poses, and it was always like shoulders, like because that's all you could show, but everybody was showing their shoulders, and guys had the deep V-neck t-shirts.
Yes.
It was like everybody had the same fucking outfit in these fucking posters.
Yeah,
I just had to throw that in there because this was another decade where it kind of trailed off at the end, but we still got a good amount of horror movies where it was sexy teens all lined up on the poster.
Well, and that's the thing is like, you know, as a teen in the 2000s, like that was like the big target thing, like Y2K, like teens were, everything was like changing. I can't really explain it.
It is hard to explain, but I know exactly what you mean.
It was just like, it was such a weird change because everyone was like, oh, it's the turn of the millennium. We have like little puppy robots that hook up to iPods. Like that was the shit.
And I won't get too into it because we don't want to like bore people with like mundane details and arguments and shit. But this was also the time where everybody was like, oh, these kids are soft.
Right.
These fucking kids are soft. And it's like, and when you look at these movie posters.
No, but my blow up chair is.
Right. But when you look at these movie posters, like everybody looked fucking soft. Like, like even the toughest people. Like, I love.
It's hard to explain.
It is hard to explain.
The 2000s is just a weird time to have lived through.
You had to be there.
You had to be there,
man.
Sorry you couldn't be there.
Sorry you couldn't. Actually, you trust me, you don't want to. It wasn't that great.
I was like, it got rough for us.
It did get rough. It did get rough. Now, the next big thing that was really prevalent in the 2000s that we got to touch upon, for lack of a better term, torture porn.
Yeah, torture porn and excessive gory movies.
Yes.
Obviously, Saw, being one of my favorite movies of all time, came out. And from there,
do a
it
shot,
was just
guys.
like,
we mentioned Saw.
Yeah. Justice for Adam. But from there, everything just exploded. They were like, well, that did really good. We should do our own version of this.
Right. And with the torture porn genre, kind of doing some research for the episode, I always forget that it harkens back to the old splatter movement from the 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of films you may recognize from Hammer. So like those old Christopher Lee Dracula movies, the Peter Cushing kind of horror movies that you saw Hammer do. Those were noted for their excessive use of gore. And it was called the splatter movement. Herschel Gordon Lewis is another great fucking filmmaker. Did The Wizard of Gore and 2000 Maniacs. Probably two of the originals. I don't want to say they're the first ones, but they're two of the most notable original splatter films. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, from there we get stuff like the slasher genre, which then evolved into meta slashers with Scream. But then in the 2000s, we got full-out torture porn with movies like Saw. And the thing that you'll notice, though, with Saw, what it started was almost this really more palatable version of these gory splatter movies.
As palatable as a Saw movie can be.
Well, and what I mean by that is like, I get what you're saying, yeah, but palatable is hard to say for a Saw movie. Yeah. But whereas like the Herschel Gordon Lewis movies with The Wizard of Gore, 2000 Maniacs, even some of the Hammer movies, was you could tell they weren't big budget productions.
Right.
And Saw isn't either. But technology had come so far with the equipment that James Wan was able to utilize at his fingertips. It looked like this very sleek, sexy action thriller kind of meets splatter. It is what it was, because like that's what the torture porn genre became. Because you have the whole noir detective story with Detective Tapp, and you know how he's got his pictures hanging up, and he's like, who are you? You know, it's like
Right.
you got that great.
No, I was gonna say that
Yeah.
just for the movies that we have noted that were, popular and kind of pushed this movement, they all have this grime to them. Like, to me,
yeah.
no movie is grimier than Hostel.
Yes.
I mean, once you
Both
get past like the
physically
beginning,
and verbally.
yes, and it was weird because I remember when I left Hostel, I was like, it's kind of weird because they didn't. Like, there's parts where they show a lot, and then there's parts where it's so dark they almost don't show a lot.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking it was dark, and it felt like they were trying to hide a lot of what they were doing for, like, I don't know whether it was ratings or just how they were trying to do it.
Oh, I'm sure ratings was a huge part of it because that's one I could
Yeah.
easily see being NC-17.
Very much
Yeah.
if it pushed further.
Oh,
but
yeah.
it was such a grimy, dark movie, just like Saw. And even though Cabin Fever is a lot of sunlight in the movie, it still feels grimy and grody and dirt, just nasty. Obviously,
Well, it's quite literally a splatter film. Like, you can see
flesh-eating
the
disease
influence.
is awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's still, they all have a grime to them.
There is a dirtiness to all of them.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm going to take this opportunity to say is, like, I want to get the listeners on my side here, guys. I know, like, you've heard Natalie Nightmare talk about she hates the first Hostel movie, but she has not seen the second one. And I've tried to tell her, I need you guys on my side here. I need you to push this on all of our social media to tell Natalie Nightmare to watch Hostel 2. Because
Come tell me to watch Hostel 2.
It is so much better than the first one. It is more feminist leaning. It is more, it is like girl power kind of Hostel. It's like all the shit that you hate about the first Hostel movie, it takes it and does the complete opposite with it.
I hope you're right.
So I'm telling you guys, come on. Yeah, we need to push this. Let's get Natalie Nightmare to watch Hostel 2 to prove how much better it is. Because that's one that I definitely wanted to talk about. Because it is I hate to say it's like it's where I was like, okay, first Hostel, Eli Roth, he's going to be a flash in the pan and he's gone and nobody's going to give a shit about him, right? Because he did Cabin Fever, good movie, decent.
Yeah, decent.
Hostel, in my opinion, I see why it got so big, but to me, it wasn't a good movie.
Yeah,
didn't
there
have
were
a lot of
parts that were
substance to
great,
it.
and just it's a lacking movie, and then
Right.
a lot of it felt really nasty to just feel nasty. I
Right.
know there's a lot more social statements that I didn't understand when I first saw that movie.
There's some social statements, but at the end of it,
But a lot of it's
still
just
just a very
gross and
sleazy,
vile.
fucking disgusting
Yeah.
movie. Hostel 2, though, in my opinion, is one of his best films. Because just some of the shit that he does differently in it. He, like, you could see it's like, okay, decent movie with Cabin Fever, not a great movie with Hostel. He, like, learned something, a flip switched, and he made a great fucking movie in Hostel 2. Like, I fucking love that. Like, we're talking torture porn movies here. We got 6 fucking Saw movies, 3 fucking Hostel movies. We don't have Hostel 3 in our notes. And I know you have definitely not seen that one.
No.
I have suffered through that one. That's one of those really shitty sequels that should have never been made. Eli Roth, I don't think he had anything to fucking do with it. Terrible fucking movie.
It's so
Avoid
bizarre.
it. Avoid it. Avoid it, guys. I'm fucking doing you a service here.
Well, thank you.
But yes, the torture porn was a huge part of the 2000s. And I think that is like every decade has its thing. You know, like 80s had slashers because everything had to be a slasher. And then the 90s had meta horror. Everything had to be meta at that point.
Yeah.
And the sexy teen movies now, it's like... And now the 2000s was totally torture porn. Because there are so many movies that we don't have in our notes here. But when you think about it, it's like... Like a shitload of those movies emulated the torture porn elements.
Yeah, they wanted to be shock and gore and not
Right.
just something kind of spooky.
Yeah.
It's weird, but like I don't feel like we had as much like we definitely had a lot of paranormal movies, but there was just so much slasher, killer, violence,
Yeah.
which is really bizarre to think about for the 2000s because it didn't feel like it would be so gruesome, but a lot kind of changed, and we're still kind of going to get to that. But the thing that we kind of had a resolution, a epiphany, if you will, the other night is that 6 of the 9 movies that we have for Saw came out in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Like, that is bonkers to me.
Yeah. Natalie was like, Like, oh, only like 2 or 3 of them came out in the 2000s, right? The rest were after that. Like, no. It was like 6 of them because they did one every year. You have to remember that. It was like literally Saw came out in 2004, and Lionsgate was like, that's such a good fucking movie. We just gotta keep fucking cranking them out. And horror, of course, notoriously cheap and easy to produce.
Yeah.
So they just fucking went gangbusters. And we got a new Saw movie every fucking year.
Yeah, and I think the only reason I thought that is because I remember when the 4th one came out, for whatever reason, it was one I couldn't see in theaters. Like, I just did not make it.
I saw that one in theaters.
And then I watched it at home. I was like, what the actual fuck? And I was like so mad. Like, it's like literally my least favorite.
It's a bad one. It's
it's
not a good one.
It's a movie.
Yeah, Stevie no likey.
Stevie
no throw that out there. Yeah, those are 4 and 5 were hard to sit through, and I fucking saw those in theaters, dog.
But it's like, I think that's whenever I stopped. Like, the 5th one came out, the 6th one came out, and I think it wasn't until after the 7th one was out, like on like DVD or whatever, that I think I finally was like, let me try watching these. And I endured, and then got better.
They were really bad. 6 gave us hope, and then 7 took all that hope and was like, fuck off.
Yeah, but still, 6 Saw movies.
6 Saw movies,
pretty wild.
6 Saw movies from 2004 to 2009 is pretty fucking impressive. But yeah, torture porn genre was huge. The other thing that was really big that started to see a resurgence in the 2000s was zombie movies.
Yeah,
we got some really good fucking zombie movies.
Like zombie stuff in general. Like, we had the little game Plants vs. Zombies.
Oh, fuck
I feel like it was in 2000s,
yeah,
right?
I remember Plants vs. Zombies.
There was a lot of like gaming stuff. But definitely, I mean, the film. Really,
I think zombie games, like you mentioned it, like we were talking about with like the Resident Evil and Silent Hill and House of the Dead, even.
Yeah.
Shitty Uwe Boll adaptation.
Left 4 Dead. All of these movies.
There were a bunch of
out.
zombie games that really came out, and then some of those got adapted into movies, and then from there we just got like zombie movies like that were their own thing.
Right.
Like obviously George A. Romero was still making movies, so we got Land of the Dead and Diary of the Dead. Those are 2 George A. Romero zombie movies that continued his legacy. We got the remake of Dawn of the Dead from Zack Snyder, and that came out like this, like either the same year or they came out within a year of Land of the Dead, which was fucking bizarre to me.
Well, and one thing too, and I know that the series didn't start until 2010, but the comics were going way before. But The Walking Dead,
yes,
huge. Like, I was reading those comics, I think probably around the time the show got announced, and then I was like, oh, what's this you say? Because like I was into the zombie shit. Like I've been a huge Resident Evil fan for years. So that was one, I picked up, started reading, but also a book that came out in the 2000s, World War Z, which eventually got a movie. So there's just zombie shit was everywhere.
Zombie shit was, it's no joke. Zombies were literally everywhere. It's funny, we had a little bit of a disagreement before the episode because there was another trend that we'll talk about here later. Well, actually, no. Another trend that we need to talk about is the found footage genre. Kind of got a little bit of a buzz with Paranormal Activity, but as we talked about in the 2010s, it was more of a 2010s thing. So it's like, but we were like debating, is like, was it a boom? It's like, no, the boom came later, but the boom that really did fucking happen was zombies.
Yeah,
like, Natalie's not shitting. Like I'm trying to like bring it full circle here, but yeah, we like if there was a boom, it was definitely fucking zombie movies.
Yeah,
and zombie. Just the zombie genre blew up because, like I said, video games and fucking books. Zombies were everywhere. Graphic novels. But yeah, we also got films like I said, we got the George A. Romero ones. We got the Dawn of the Dead remake. We got fucking 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. I mean, 28 Days Later, with the way it was filmed, I would almost start to... I've been hearing this buzz of lo-fi horror, and I feel like that's so close. Not quite,
right.
But there is something about the way that movie feels whenever you're watching it with that kind of weird quality.
I could see that.
But it's definitely not quite lo-fi compared to what everyone else is talking about.
But it has those elements,
It feels like you're watching something you shouldn't
It does. It feels well, like we were talking about with like the 2000s, or like that griminess that we saw in a lot of the other films, like with the torture porn stuff.
Right.
That torture porn stuff kind of spilled over into other genres, like Dawn of the Dead. I would put as a torture porn movie.
Well, there was a lot of realism
Yeah.
and discomfort in those topics, and 28 Days Later covers a lot of that stuff. I mean, they even kind of comment about, you know, what would happen to women in the middle of an apocalypse. Like, they hit things that you don't expect.
Yeah. Yeah, like I've said before when we talk about 28 Days Later, I love Christopher Eccleston's character. Mm-hmm. He's like, you know, when you have the threat of zombies, but then you also have the threat of real people being evil.
I mean, Walking Dead, like, that's it. Good. Like, humans fucking suck.
It's like, why is every why is every guy who plays the doctor always a good fucking villain? Like,
they are.
Fucking, like, think about it. It's like Christopher Eccleston, great doctor and great villain. David Tennant, great doctor, great villain. Matt Smith, great doctor, great villain. I'm fucking telling you, man.
Yeah.
Capaldi, I'm sure, has played great villains.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's like, it fucking never fails. Sorry, just a little side note, but like, why every fucking actor who plays the doctor. So I love 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later. But probably one of our favorite fucking zombie movies came out in 2004, and it's fucking Shaun of the Dead.
Absolutely.
Shaun of the Dead is
a perfect movie.
How
10
do you not love this movie?
Yeah.
Have you met anybody who doesn't like Shaun of the Dead?
You got red on you. I think this is one of those movies that I probably quote the most in my everyday life, because I do say, sorry, Sean.
Sorry, Sean.
And anytime I see something red, I always think you got red on you.
You got red on you.
Anytime I see the drumsticks, which is what we call them here in the States.
Yeah.
Walking through the ice cream aisle, I'm like, there we go.
Cornetto trilogy. This is what started it. See, it's funny you say that. I always think of anytime I'm like making plans in my head, and I'm like, oh, and then I always end with relaxing. I always think of myself as like, and celebrate with a pint at the Winchester.
Yeah.
Like, that's like, Shaun of the Dead has woven its way into our fucking brains and our vocabulary. It's just so good. And it is a great zombie movie in addition to being so
really
funny.
Is.
Like, it's crazy to me how good of a zombie movie it is.
Well, and it's got these shocking moments, which are always oddly followed by something immediately hilarious. But I remember the first time I watched it, and they get to the Winchester finally, but those zombies like know that they're there. And there's the part where they're arguing and the boyfriend gets pulled through the window and they like dig into his stomach and pull his guts out. And I was like, I didn't think I was going to see this, because you see all the zombies in the background the whole time, but you never, and like, there's like some eating, but like you never see someone get like ripped apart. Until then. And it's just, there it is.
It's my favorite part in the whole fucking movie. I love when you just see him getting like pulled out and his fucking guts are getting ripped out.
But then you get like, don't stop me now.
Right. Don't stop
with like, hey, I don't know if we can sing that on here.
Good point.
But
don't want to get that shit on us.
But like, the jukebox going, they're like fighting with like the pool cues and shit, and you just completely forget that you just watched a guy get torn in half.
You do. Immediately you forget about it. Yes.
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead, great parody of the zombie genre, but at the same time, it's a good genre movie.
And again, a huge statement on humanity. Yes. Like, there's so much in there.
Like, and like, zombie movies are the best for that. And it's like, I know and we'll talk more about this in the 90s, but like, other than Night of the Living Dead, I'm trying to sit here and think, what good zombie movies did we even get in the 90s? I don't think we got very many zombie movies. And I could be wrong. Please call me out.
My brain's full of 2000s right now, it's like, I don't know if I have room for 90s.
But other zombie movies I just want to give a quick shout out to. I don't know if anybody has ever seen this, but I'll give you a good comedy, kind of not serious, campy horror movie to go watch. Zombie Strippers.
That movie's fucking wild.
I fucking dig that movie. It's fucking low budget.
It's absolute camp.
It is
with
camp.
Like the coolest chicks that like know they're the hottest shit are in that movie. It's it's weird. But yeah, it's a movie.
I love it. I thought it was a really fun little fucking shitty horror movie. So yeah, Zombie Strippers is one. Fido came out in the 2000s. Fido is one that I gotta tell people to
fun
go
little
see.
Movie.
Because it's basically the concept is, what if zombies were pets?
Right.
And that's literally it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it goes deep. Don't get me wrong.
But there's like, and if I'm remembering this wrong, you can probably correct me, but don't they have like zombies kind of like in little stations where they can do tasks because they're able to like learn things.
Yes.
And I feel like there's a thing in the movie where they're out somewhere and they're like kind of strapped to something, but he's like putting carts back or something, or like in a
yeah. There's like a servitude part of it too.
It's a little weird.
It is. It's a little
but
weird.
It's a great.
It's a very smart, intelligent movie.
Yes,
to go along with the cool zombie shit. Billy Connolly. So how can you not love Billy Connolly?
Right.
One thing that you wrote down. You did more research on this aspect of the 2000s than I did, but I will agree. What you have written down here is 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Post 9/11 horror, and it was completely different.
Well, it's interesting because it's bizarre seeing, younger people learn about this in school, like whenever I was in high school when this happened. And obviously, for our generation, 9/11 was like a huge turning point for so many things. But also
media, especially.
Yeah, media, the way things were consumed. And kind of an interesting thing that we were just talking about with some of the topics in these popular movies that came out. There was a lot of more realistic horror. You're talking about movies like Hostel, which are just grotesque and awful. A lot of movies that really made you look at your humanity.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see that kind of trend because, like, the more, you look back at the movies just that we've mentioned and these popular movies or the original movies, there's a lot of realistic horror. There's a lot of zombies, a lot of, and talking about zombie movies having huge statements on humanity, we were all kind of forced to look at ourselves, and it sounds really ignorant as an American, which most of us are and were, but it was kind of like that turning point where we realized things can happen here because, like, we hadn't really had to deal with
right
that.
It was the end of the selfishness, self-centeredness, this this
for
invincibility,
obviously the current state of our country shows that we're not united at all,
right.
But there was a lot of change and a lot of looking in and people being more kind to each other. It was really weird and bizarre.
True.
And I just feel like there was a lot of looking at us, looking at humanity, thinking of those end times, because you had the zombie apocalypse movies, but there were other just apocalyptic movies.
Apocalyptic was a big theme. One movie that I know you haven't seen that I've talked about and gushed about is called Doomsday. It was from 2008, directed by Neil Marshall, same guy who did The Descent.
Yeah.
Big post-apocalyptic movie.
Right.
A very Mad Max kind of horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at like shit like Resident Evil got into the post-apocalyptic, especially as the series went on.
Yeah, literally Resident Evil Apocalypse.
Yeah, Apocalypse and Extinction and all that. Yeah. So,
but it's oddly there were a lot of like kind of warfare attack movies. It's really weird, and this goes outside of horror too. There was just a lot of war movies.
A lot of war movies. I was gonna say military was a big thing I noticed. I feel like there was like a lot of military presence in movies where you didn't see that before.
Well, a perfect example with 28 Days Later, and you see, the military function, but also one that is kind of interesting because it's an attack on a large city, which I think is New York, isn't it? In Cloverfield?
Cloverfield, yeah, it's New York because you have the Statue of Liberty.
Yes.
Yeah. One of my favorite fucking scenes in that movie.
I don't know why I was not remembering.
No, it's
but
I love that scene, though.
It's literally an attack on New York, and it's odd, with 9/11 being an attack in New York, but we look at so many movies that came out before that ever happened, and they were always destroying New York or Chicago. Like,
there's always New York, New York,
it's
Chicago, fucking big cities. It's always
right.
shit like that.
Yeah. But Cloverfield does that. Like, they were like, we're gonna attack New York, but it's gonna be aliens.
Because they even talk about it, like, is it a terrorist thing?
Right.
They mention that briefly, and then you have the military kind of doing their whole gig there towards the end of the movie where they encounter the military personnel. But yeah, that was a big thing. It was like and I think to the point where George A. Romero has, I know in Diary of the Dead, there's a really big statement about the military there. Obviously, Day of the Dead, there's the military statement there, and I want to say Land of the Dead does too. Like, that was a big thing with George A. Romero, was pointing out, aspects of the military, criticizing aspects of the military and the military-industrial complex.
Understandable.
He was very good at those statements and used zombie movies to do that. But yeah, post 9/11, it was, it wasn't just Romero. There were all these other filmmakers kind of integrating that into those statements into their films.
Yeah.
And one thing I love that you say is like nihilism. You had nihilism in the notes, and
and
I love that because that describes so much of it.
Well, there was a lot of hopelessness.
We talked about bleak endings last week,
right?
And it bleeds right into this episode because like there was a bleakness. It wasn't just the endings; like everything was fucking bleak.
It was, and it's kind of interesting we didn't talk about this one because Cloverfield has a really sad ending.
It has a sad ending.
The way the camera cuts off, where there's just the two of them under the bridge, and the like bombs and shit are like the fucking aliens like right there, and it is a really sad ending, but it's one of those that just ends and you're like, well, I mean, I think we won if I'm watching this movie. That's kind of like the feeling you get watching it, and you almost forget that it's a movie.
You do, yeah. And it's found footage, but it feels fucking real.
It does.
I mean, it's like and maybe it is the found footage quality. Maybe it is I think it's the acting because you have a great cast. Like,
right.
I think there's so many things about that just work and give it that realism that you're talking about.
It's such a stressful movie because it's like just everything keeps like going wrong, like worse and worse and worse, and it's hella shaky cam and like hella flash warning, but it's a brilliant movie. Like I love the creature design. Like it's my favorite part at the end when you get to see Clover, fully. But it's just a really fucking cool movie. But it's a lot like there's so many movies. We kind of talked about Cabin Fever, and it's campy and there's a lot of shit dialogue, but it's another one where there's this theme of unstoppable forces. You've got zombies, you've got flesh-eating disease that's in the water, you have this fucking alien attack, like
because a lot of us at that point were feeling so disenfranchised that it was just this element of, like you said, hopelessness to everything.
Yeah.
We got some great emo music out of it,
right.
But yeah, it was like there was almost like there were emo films to go with the emo music, and it was the same thing, that nihilism was a great theme of that music of the time. It's also a big theme in these movies. Like I think that's a great point to make, because there was just this sense of like, why fight the impending doom?
Right.
And like when you talk about those unstoppable forces, like I get that vibe too. It's like these unstoppable forces, but also at the end, there's so many of our protagonists who just felt like, why fight it? Like I felt like we got so many quote, why fight it endings.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to say it.
It's like The Ring. Like The Ring is a why fight it ending. And it's just, it's brilliant to me. Like, I know I use the word brilliant a lot. Don't fucking come at me. But yeah, it's like, it is. It's one of those great little aspects of everything. Is like, it's like, because we got so many people who just felt like, what's the point?
Right. And it's bizarre to me. It feels like, and it was such a huge thing for our generation. That moment, everyone that you talk to, you ask them where they were and what they were doing, they all know. Like, everybody knows. And
I remember that whole fucking day. And
right.
It's so weird because it starts out like any other fucking day.
Right. But then it just happened, and it's a huge turning point,
so fucking weird.
It set off a huge chain of events, the war on terror.
Yeah.
And that worked its way into films across all genres, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's bizarre
even shit
to me.
Like Hills Have Eyes.
We're going to be, in another 20 years, we are going to look back at now and look at the movies the way the pandemic changed things.
Oh, for sure.
And it's bizarre to me to think like how it really felt as a 15-year-old when that happened. How it did feel like our country all put aside their differences to just mourn for the country and for the loss of people.
Right.
But during a pandemic, half the people were too selfish to like do anything.
How quickly things change
Right.
in 20 years. Yeah.
And it's
the
like,
mentality.
you know, since it wasn't just our country being attacked, it's like, well, we can't be all America if it's not just our country getting attacked. And it's bizarre to me that I know in 20 years we're going to look back and look at how the pandemic changed movies, not just from America, but all over the world.
Well, we've seen it. Like, we just saw it with Pearl. They have masks on, which is funny because the movie takes place like 100 years ago. But
Right, during Spanish flu.
But at the same time, it's like
Yeah.
they had masks, and we've seen that with some other films where characters are wearing masks.
Well, and it's funny because when we watched Pearl, and it's something that I chuckled about just because it was obvious statement on the current
The current state of the world.
current state of the world. But there's even a comment in the movie about, make sure to wear it. Some people don't want to. And I remember a lot of people who were complaining about wearing masks in 2020. People were sharing these old newspaper clippings of people, protesting the masks during that flu.
Yeah, people
and
were protesting masks. Well, it's like people protested the fucking seatbelt.
Right, exactly.
It's like, I don't want to be safe, damn it.
And this
Let
is
me get thrown from the windshield.
Totally off track. Totally off track. And the last thing I'll say before we move on, but ironically, that is a story that I can factually say my Aunt Kathy was like, no, people like were so mad. Like people were just protesting and like bitching and complaining because of about a law for a seatbelt. And like
seatbelts.
Like I used to just like sit in the back seat, like just flopping around like a little kid. Like, it's so different now.
My mom and dad were like so different on the fucking seatbelt thing. It's so funny.
So no matter what they try to implement, there's going to be another thing in 10 or 15 years, and everyone's going to be like, no. And it's just going to be a normal thing.
It is. It's just there's always going to be that little element. But yeah, a couple of things we want to hit really quick here at the end of the episode. Some great directors that we really love. We've talked about some of them.
Yeah.
I've got Karen Kusama on the list. We gave her some love for Jennifer's Body, and of course The Invitation, which came later. But we got our boy Rob Zombie.
Hell yeah!
Oh man, the 2000s would not have been as great as they were for us if it weren't for the films.
Obviously,
of Rob
we
Zombie.
didn't really talk about it, but it is a bit gory. A House of a Thousand Corpses.
Well, and I remember I Googled some torture porn movies before we started, and they list House of a Thousand Corpses, which I don't think it's torture porn.
No, not quite.
Talks
I think
about
it's just
torture,
a gory.
discusses torture, mentions torture, never really shows torture, though.
Very
like,
minimal.
Let's be real.
Yeah, there's like honestly like 2 scenes.
Right. And it's like, and everything is just very minimal. So it's like, I wouldn't consider him like a torture porn director. I mean, Devil's Rejects, maybe.
I don't know.
There's a little bit more torturous
He's heavy
elements there.
gore. I don't know. I think torture porn, there's always this level where he goes like they go uncomfortable to go uncomfortable, whereas like the scenes in House of a Thousand Corpses where you see like the hand cutting or like she's like cutting his scalp and shit, you don't even see like Otis skin the guy. You just see him like sewing the skin.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not so in your face. Like it's gross and it's gory, but it's not just like, here, watch this guy saw his foot off for 40 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. It is different. There's a different element to it. It's almost like, and maybe part of it was Rob Zombie was trying to get, the R rating. We know how hard it was for him to get the R rating. So maybe him like doing like the fuzzy pictures and the quick cuts and stuff. Maybe that was his way of getting the rating. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
But it worked.
But
it really
ironically, with James Wan being our next director here,
another guy we got to talk about.
The Saw movies are notorious for those cool, choppy, fast scenes, but he likes to show it all.
He does. He likes to show it all. There's not really anything James Wan hides away from.
No, not at all.
But he does bring this high level of quality to everything. And that's kind of what I was getting at earlier with how it felt like an improvement from the splatter films, because James Wan does, again, he just brings this high level of quality.
Yeah.
He has this high standard that he imposes on his films that I appreciate and I respect and I admire greatly, because I think it just makes his work stand head and shoulders above any of his peers.
Yeah, I'm with you.
He's one of our favorites for a reason.
He's up there, top 5.
Yeah. We mentioned Eli Roth. So, I mean, again, he did some great films in the 2000s with Cabin Fever, Hostel 2. I think he may have had one more in there that I'm forgetting, but he does deserve a shout out, and he's done so many great things for the horror genre. He's very much a champion of the horror business. And you know what's funny is that I don't think has anything bad come out about him.
No,
he seems like one of those creepy
so.
dudes.
He does.
I don't mean any disrespect. He just looks kind of like a douche.
Well,
you know?
what's funny is as you were saying that, I was gonna say, so you can enjoy the director, especially in Cabin Fever, when he plays the weird dude that wanders into camp.
Come on, Dr. Mondo.
Right.
I love his little cameos.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He has a great cameo in 2001 Maniacs, which is another 2000s movie,
Yeah.
and I think he plays the same guy from Cabin Fever, so fun little tie there.
Yep.
Gotta mention Zack Snyder, directed Dawn of the Dead. Didn't really do a lot of horror after that. I know he just did that Army of the Dead movie not too long ago, but yeah, other than that, like, he did Dawn of the Dead. I just want to give him a shout out because that was his first movie.
And it's brilliant.
And it's amazing. It's one of the best zombie movies. And after that, like, he did go on to direct some great shit though. 300. Who doesn't love 300?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite fucking action movies.
300's fucking awesome.
Fucking amazing. Watchmen. Who doesn't like? I love Watchmen.
Yeah.
So fucking much.
No, Zack Snyder. Those movies right there, 300 and Watchmen is just like chef's kiss to me.
I don't think anybody's had 3 better films out of the gate with what Zack Snyder did. Just amazing. So yeah, Karen Kusama gave her a great shout out here. Darren Lynn Bousman.
Yeah.
Got to give him some love because of obviously the Saw franchise, but he did also direct Repo the Genetic Opera, which we were giving a shout out earlier too. And I think his direction, you see the Saw influence first off.
You do, yeah.
You see the Saw influence, but he just has this great great style that just fits the horror genre so well. So I really love his work. Oren Peli, the genius behind the Paranormal Activity movies.
Right. I mean, that's, that is its own episode, but...
Yeah, we're going to talk more about Paranormal Activity for sure. Ty West got his start in the 2000s. House of the Devil. Love House of the Devil. That wasn't his first movie,
awesome movie.
But it was like to me, it's one of his best films. Came out in 2009, so great there. Michael Dougherty, director of Trick or Treat, went on to direct a Godzilla movie.
Hell yeah!
And he also directed Krampus, which is Natalie's favorite Christmas movie.
Yes.
So we love Michael Dougherty. Matt Reeves, who directed Cloverfield, I had to give him a shout out because obviously Cloverfield. But he's also gone on to direct some great shit. And he just directed The Batman, and we just found out he's getting The Batman 2.
Hell
so
yeah.
Matt Reeves, I really love Matt Reeves as a filmmaker, and I think he's getting some love because of The Batman. But I thought from Cloverfield, he immediately out of the gate, just great filmmaker.
Is perfection.
Yeah. And last one I got on my list is Edgar Wright.
Of course.
Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
Hot Fuzz. World's End. Last Night in Soho. The list goes on. We could talk all about his movies. But his Cornetto trilogy with fucking Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. Just such a place in my heart for those guys.
Shaun of the Dead is like one of those little... I've got a little pocket just in there for
Shaun
my
of the
heart.
Dead and
It's
Hot
just
Fuzz,
so much
I
for
love
me.
them. I love those movies so fucking much. So yes. Thank you to all those wonderful directors for giving us some of the best films. And last thing we want to hit before we finish up is just something fun that we have talked about.
Yes, this is just something I think about anytime I watch one of these movies, and I feel like we don't have this anymore.
You don't.
But we had the best fucking soundtracks.
Best soundtracks.
Whether they were custom, like obviously Queen of the Damned is like the biggest, baddest fucking bitch out there.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you had Jonathan Davis creating all this music for Lestat, and then you had all the artists that came in and covered them. So you have Jay Gordon from Orgy, Chester Bennington from Linkin Park,
David Draymond
from Disturbed covering these songs.
Yeah.
And it was just this whole fucking thing.
Along with actual songs from Static X on the soundtrack. Disturbed actually had songs on the soundtrack.
Right.
In fact, I think there's a part in the movie where you hear Down with the Sickness.
Yes.
So
yeah. It's like the song pre-concert.
Yeah.
Everyone's
before the
out,
concert. That's
jamming.
right. That's right.
Yeah. It's like you had stuff like that, and you had original, music, whether it was just really badass, like Resident Evil's one that sticks out with me. Unfortunately, Marilyn Manson did the music for that, but it's one of those, the soundtracks, even without vocals, was just like so fucking badass
love that
to
soundtrack.
listen to. You're
when
like,
you hear no, you talk about that. I hear like the cookie. Cookie,
It sounds like you're saying cookie.
Well, it's like, but that's how it sounds like. If you listen to that soundtrack, I swear there's that like that sound effect that they keep playing. It's like
No, I totally understand because there's all these crazy industrial kick-ass shit
right,
in it.
because it's Manson, you know, and obviously he was influenced by Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails and all that shit. So yes, it has a very industrial metal feel, and because Marilyn Manson doesn't sing on it, you can enjoy it because it's not his fucking voice. Because I'm convinced it wasn't even him who did it.
Yeah, maybe I just don't think it was.
I don't think it was him. I think it was somebody who's way more talented and not a piece of shit. And he just threw his name on it.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Obviously, the Rob Zombie movies always have really amazing music. Rob Zombie aside.
Fucking House of a Thousand Corpses soundtrack is wildin'. Like, if you have not heard the House of a Thousand Corpses soundtrack, listen to the fucking Dr. Wolfenstein song. Oh my god, it's one of my fucking favorites. Like, it's so fucking good.
It is.
I have such a blast just listening to the soundtrack. And then, of course, the music that he picks for Devil's Rejects with a lot of Southern rock. James Gang has like 4 or 5 songs on the fucking soundtrack.
Yeah.
So if you like James Gang, which I really do, I think James Gang's pretty dope. Great soundtrack to listen to.
Yeah.
And the Halloween soundtrack, which I think I've gushed about on the show before. You get such a great fucking soundtrack when he does the Halloween movies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He curated so many great fucking songs.
He does. He picks a lot of really good hits, but some that are really popular and, in my opinion, almost overplayed, but just a lot of really good classic vibes.
Okay, if you're talking about Don't Fear the Reaper, fucking every horror movie uses Don't Fear the Reaper.
Yeah.
Like, you can't fault
X
him for that.
had, like, Don't Fear the Reaper in it.
Right. Everybody uses Don't Fear the Reaper. I agree. I think we do need to put a moratorium on certain songs, and Don't Fear the Reaper would be one of them, but you can't hold that against him. It's still a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
Yes.
But also, to add on to, if you were a teen emo like me who listened to a lot of, like, moody rock, besides Queen of the Damned, also the Underworld soundtracks, absolute fucking perfection. Full vibe. Like, there's like a Hawthorne Heights remix or some shit in one of those, and, like, that was as emo as you could get, honestly. But also, House of Wax had a really good soundtrack, even included MCR in there.
I didn't know that until you told me that.
Yeah, Helena is actually. I was looking at it, I was like, I haven't seen this movie in a while, but I was like, I remember House of Wax having a fucking dope soundtrack, and I pulled it up. I was like, that's it. I remember it now.
So one that I didn't put on our notes here that I do want to give a shout out to. I know you haven't seen the Lost Boys sequel. I think it's called The Tribe. Not. There's 2 sequels. I've only seen the second movie, but the second movie has a cover of Cry Little Sister, and it's by fucking Aiden.
Yeah. Okay. I maybe actually heard this.
I've probably played it for you before. I think I've told the fucking Amazon devices to play it for us.
Yeah.
But I fucking love it. It's one of the best covers of Cry Little Sister.
It is.
And Aiden's great. Like, we're talking about emo music in the fucking 2000s. Fucking Aiden,
they were like, I remember I was like, oh, Aiden's such a cool name. Like, that was like the name. Like, Aiden and Nevaeh, for whatever fucking reason, it was just everywhere. I feel like I heard that all the time. But yeah, they're one of those hella emo bands. But yes, it is a good cover. Yeah. And it's cool that even for a movie that I don't think did too well, and some of these movies that are kind of really campy or kind of shitty, like you have Freddy versus Jason right now, because obviously
fucking Il Nino, dog. Like, I fucking love that song. How Can I Live? Like, oh, that was a great fucking, like, Il Nino, first off. Underrated fucking band from the 2000s.
Yeah.
Love everything about him. And then, just a great song. Great. And the whole fucking movie, though, has a great soundtrack because you get a Slipknot song on that soundtrack. Mm-hmm. Spine Shank.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't know
Murder
why.
Dolls.
I can't explain it, but the soundtracks felt hard for horror movies.
Oh,
like, there were a lot of, there were movies that had different vibes, obviously. They didn't all have the hard, kind of heavy stuff, but I just feel like there was so much, like, everyone had a Marilyn Manson or a Slipknot or a Linkin Park. Like, that
Linkin
shit was
Park
just
popped up on a lot of soundtracks, not just Transformers. It popped up on a lot of soundtracks.
I would say, I always think it's really weird to think that Transformers used Linkin Park and they used, like, and I know there's more, but those are like the two.
Smashing Pumpkins, Disturbed. So many fucking bands popped up on the Transformers soundtrack that you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, kudos to it, because that's the shit that I'm here for. I love a movie with a solid soundtrack, whether it's original, made for the movie music, or like theme song, like back when everybody had their own weird theme song.
Yeah.
But it felt like the music, the soundtracks were just so different then. I can't explain it, but they just felt fun.
You're absolutely right. We don't get that anymore. It's like, we got a little bit of it. Halloween Ends, we had Hunter's Moon by Ghost,
Hell
which
yeah.
we both fucking fell in love with.
Yes.
So, like, we do get it, like, here and there.
Yeah.
But we don't get what we need to. We need to get more. I'm with you. We need more badass soundtracks. Like, Roadrunner Records, Flip Records, Interscope, whoever the fuck any of you are, I need you all to get your shit together. Wind Up Records, I think, was the other one that did a bunch of soundtracks. Y'all need to get your shit together and do soundtracks like that again, because we need it. As horror fans, we crave that.
Right. And I don't know,
we'll
maybe
eat that shit up and buy it.
Maybe a lot of the movies just don't like push it, because I feel like there were so many transition scenes in those older movies where it's like the music's going to be really loud for no reason while these kids are walking, and then it like comes back down to the conversation. Yeah. Like a lot of music was really pushed out there, like, hey, here's this really popular song that we're using right now.
Yes.
And I feel like a lot of movies now are kind of smarter, like it's on a TV in the background, or it's on a car radio, but it's not super blasting in your ears.
It's more like subliminal marketing.
Yeah, because I'm like looking, I'm just curious, like, I feel like Scream always had like some good music, and I'm pulling up like the fifth movie, and I'm like, I don't remember any of these fucking songs playing.
The fifth movie?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The fifth movie didn't have hardly any.
I don't remember.
But the first movie and the second movie for sure definitely had really good music. And the third movie had Creed.
Yes.
The third movie had Creed,
They
guys.
all have Nick Cave in the bad seeds, because I think there's even a part in Scream 5 where they have it.
Yeah, you have to have
But
Red
it's
right
like,
hand.
Scream 5 says like Orville Peck and DJ Khaled, and I'm just like, I don't remember fucking anything. But
like I can't really remember a lot of those tracks, but I do remember the third movie had Creed. fucking remember it had the poster in the back too. That came out in 2000, so I think that's the perfect film to wrap up on. Is talking about Scream 3 and Creed.
Well, and Scream 3 was also one of those movies that kind of changed the way it did itself based off of real life.
That's true.
Things going on.
That's true. Yeah. We'll get more into that when we talk about the Scream franchise, because we're going to do a Scream franchise movie. Especially, there's a sixth movie coming out. Don't know if you've heard.
Yeah.
But I think we'd like to talk.
March 10th?
Maybe we do a whole episode on the first 5 movies before the sixth movie comes out. Yeah. There's an idea. Future episode. Trademark.
Stay tuned.
TM. I said it. Guys, thank you for joining us. This has been a fun episode looking at the 2000s. This is the episode that really covered a lot of Natalie and I as formative year horror fans.
Yeah. If you want to know what it was like to be a teenager in the 2000s, email us at horrorzoidpod@gmail.com.
For sure.
And we will answer all of your questions. If you're a little baby Z, it's fine. Yeah. It's all right. Ask us questions.
Yeah, we're happy to give some more glimpses into it. And I was thinking about this when we did the 2010s. Like, there's so many movies I feel like we couldn't cover because it's just the tip of the iceberg.
I mean, it is a whole decade.
Well, yeah, you're right. And we were talking about it with this. Like, you were doing another video, another TikTok, and you're like, oh my god, there's so many fucking movies. Yeah. And it's like, you're absolutely right. There are. So it's like, this is something where we're doing this 5-part series where we look at the decades, but by no means is this the last time we're going to talk about these decades. This is right. This is something that we could go on and on about forever. So trust me,
especially the 2000s.
There's just
so much goodness here.
Oh yeah, and again, we were teens. This is like our prime year. It's like this is when we had nothing better to do with our lives.
This is when the home phone rang and we were scared when it did. Like, I mean, it was just there's so much that's changed, and I don't want to feel like an old person where I'm like, well, back in my day, the phone was on the wall.
Back in the day, we had the torture porn genre.
And every text that you sent cost you a minute.
Fuck, that did.
And yes, you had to buy minutes for your phone.
You had to buy minutes. You had to push the 7 button 4 times just to get the character that you wanted at that moment.
Yes.
Like fucking T9. How did we do it? How did we fucking do it?
Fucking dude, we were skilled as hell.
We are fucking old if you haven't figured that out. If you've made it this far in the episode, kudos and congratulations. And again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to another episode next week, but we'll leave you with this. Zydrate comes in a little glass vial.
A little glass vial?
A little glass vial. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every weekend. Follow us on TikTok at HorrorZoidPod and send emails to horrorzoidpod@gmail.com with your thoughts, questions, and stories for us to read on a future episode. To all our Zoids out there, stay scary.